And there are some more aggressive parts to this. I mentioned a couple. You're going to have the sheetrock to the top plate. It'll have to be sealed in these new homes. When we go out to these, when we do existing home remediation contracting, the first thing we do is take a two-part foam and go around the top plates, interior and exterior in the house, because that drops the amount of air infiltration typically 20 to 30% in a house. I mean, it's like the low-hanging fruit. Well, they're requiring that now for a new home that you build, because they know a lot of air movement can occur behind walls, in and around walls at the top plates. So that's a requirement. You're going to have headers above doors, and windows will need to be insulated. There are certain types of window and door framing that will have to be adhered to. You'll have to...
when you say insulated, you're talking about just putting a thermal break between the two members?
Exactly, like a small piece of...
Or a mattress.
Yeah, exactly. The basis behind it is just simply to, once again, make it more of a consistent thermal envelope from inside to outside, and to just make the product a little bit better. There's really no additional cost from us. Like I said, there will be a little bit more time involved, but I mean, I'm not going to pass off 15, 20 minutes additional time as far as my cost to builders. We're trying to keep these costs as we transition in place and help you out any way we can. I think your actual cost may actually be reduced a little bit in material, because when they're talking about framing, like framing corners, you're going to be you will be required to have insulation in the corners. So you'll have to use progressive framing where you can get it in there, and you won't have two pieces of wood meeting like this where you have an opportunity for air to bypass through there. Let me kind of show you. This is an infrared picture I took, and this is a great example. This was a house up in Landrum. Turn this light off for just a second. Is that it right there? So we can see it just a little bit better. Yeah. We put this house, what we do when we go in these existing homes like this, we'll use a blower door, a door fan, and we'll draw the air out of the house and depressurize it. And when we have, when it's wintertime, it will stick out like a sore thumb where there's air movement back behind those walls. Here's a great example of why they're addressing this now. You can see, and that is an actual temperature there, 49 degrees at the top of that wall. The rest of that wall you can see was in the 50s or so. So there's 7 or 8, 10 degrees difference between the top of that wall and the rest of the wall over there. So that's an example of what they're trying to address by sealing top plates and all these other measures. You can see too there, right there in that corner, we see that all the time, where you'll see air movement back behind there. And then you can actually see the thermal bridge where the framing is in between there, where the wood is in direct contact with the sheetrock, and that, as a result, you get a little bit colder temperature on that particular surface area. So that's a good, kind of a good illustration of what they're trying to address.
Dean, if you'll go back 1 minute.
Yes.
You said, what was your detail for sealing the drywall at the top plate that you just mentioned? We've
got a 2-part foam machine. So we just go in and we sweep back the insulation from directly on top of where the plate, you know, where the 2 pieces of drywall meet the top plate, and we just spray that foam right along the top, and it'll
So that's a retrofit situation.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Now, we want the new, as this is a requirement, we want to bid that to y'all. We do insulation contracting as well, so you may have a situation where you'd ask us to contract putting in your insulation. Well, before we blow in the insulation in the attic, we will address that all around the ceiling area for you, just to make sure that it's taken care of.
What is the other detail would be for us to have them glue that top joint?
If I'm not mistaken, if you look at that, I think they said gluing wasn't allowed, I believe.
It does say that.
Does it? Okay, yeah. And I wouldn't have noticed that if I hadn't read it myself. But yeah, they want it to actually be sealed.
What are the only method of sealing is with a spray foam on top?
Foam or caulk.
Yeah, construction heating is 5.2.3.
Right.
So is that a caulk applied as you're applying the drywall, or is that a caulk applied after the fact on the top?
I would imagine that it's after the fact. I would think. But, I mean, I can find out for you. If you'll hit me with that on the email, I'll call the contact at the EPA and verify it. Because there's going to be a lot of questions like this, and I want to be able to answer them for you.
There's got to be a more efficient way than getting up in there and going on top of that. I mean, there's got to be a bead you can run or something on the plate or on the drywall to make that happen.
I agree. I mean, we'll just have to find out what the requirements are and see what people suggest. Okay, now, here's the one where your heating and cooling contractor has to fill out the information. Scott Kelly was going to be here, and he didn't come for some reason. I was going to kind of have him talk a little bit, because in trying to quantify costs for you and figure out, all right, so what will be the actual monetary cost of implementing these things? Scott, I called him and I said, what do you think in looking at this checklist? And it's, you'll see it there. It's the second one, I think.
Page 6.
Page 6, yes. Basically what they're going to do is they're going to verify all the information from the heating and cooling equipment as far as models, serial numbers, capacities, that kind of thing. That's the first part of what they have to fill out. Then they're going to have to go out when the equipment is installed and verify, like field test and verify certain aspects of this checklist for you as well. So it's kind of a two-part thing. There's really, I asked him, he said, well, we do all that anyway, so it's not going to be like there's a whole lot of additional, work, man-hours involved. There may be a little additional administrative cost, of course, to fill out the paperwork, but he said it's going to be negligible. However, he did say, one of the requirements for these contractors, they'll have to have a certification.